When you think of colleges these days, you think of protests, you think of snowflakes and safe spaces. So how do we fix all of this? Let's ask our education panel. We have a wonderful panel of individuals. Thank you all for being with us. Okay, I'll start with you, Charlton, because I was reading what you were talking to the producers earlier about, and it struck me because you worked for President Trump's campaign. You are the college Republican president on your school, at your school, which is Wagner College, and you say that you've been alienated by professors. It's hard to get good grades. Tell me more about that.
Oh yeah, there's been alienation all over campus, whether it's just with professors or fellow students, and it's been difficult to maintain good grades, be able to be the single conservative voice in a classroom, and it's been difficult, and it's you just have to keep strong to your values and to your core beliefs and make sure you're advocating for what you believe in.
Okay, we have Paul Anthony Questel on the front row, a student, a junior at Manhattanville College, yes, and part of campusreform.com. You're a correspondent. So the University of South Florida, they brought in these therapy llamas. We remember this story. We did it about 2 weeks ago during final exams to just calm the students. And then after the election, we heard about coloring books and Play-Dohs and therapy dogs being brought in. Your school has offered counseling, or did offer counseling when President Trump was elected, right?
Yeah.
What'd you think about that?
I think it was really terrible. It's their health office is offering counseling to students that were having difficulty coping with the presidency of Donald Trump, and I know for a fact that that service would not be offered if the election results were different. We had a President Hillary Clinton.
So if it were Hillary Clinton that won, they wouldn't be doing that?
Not at all.
Okay, Wendy, I'll go to you. Professor Wendy Osefo, a regular guest on our show. Good to see you again, Wendy. Professor at George Washington and a liberal commentator. And you're saying that you're feeling backlash for your liberal views.
Yeah, I feel backlash for my liberal views because I feel as though when you work at a campus, you have to understand that everyone has different views, right? But sometimes when you're a professor and you're outspoken, students wonder why you're able to say certain things. And I think it cuts both ways, whether you're a progressive or whether you're a conservative. And it's just something that we have to know that campuses are for us to ignite conversation, and whatever your view is, you should not be stymied by it.
All right, we have Professor Joseph Borelli in the back. He's a New York City councilman and adjunct policy professor at CUNY, which is City University of New York. Now, one of your colleagues was actually fired at your school for saying that they were advocating for dead cops. You also have a professor at NYU who is hoping for white genocide and continues to get promoted. What are your thoughts about these professors saying these outlandish things?
Well, I respectfully disagree with what Wendy is saying. We do see a lot of these examples throughout the country, not just here in New York, and we always see them in the vein of them being anti-conservative or anti-Trump. No one incident speaks for a systemic problem, but when you have a pattern and it's almost never reversed in the opposite direction, I think it is something system-wide, and it is a problem. And I think this is a real problem for academia. Academic writing should be free. Professors should be free to write whatever they want. But for the first time, I think, in history, we're seeing this liberal bias sort of descend into every facet of campus life.
All right,
I'm sorry, I have to disagree with that. And for you to sit here and say that it only cuts both ways, I'm sitting right beside you and actually telling you it goes the other way. If you look at the 1980s with apartheid, if you look at the 1960s with civil rights, for you to again sit here and say it only goes to conservatives, that means you don't know your history. Historically, it has also gone to liberals, so it does cut both ways.
Emily, do you agree with that? Does it go both ways?
Not on my campus.
Okay, Emily goes to Harvard. Emily's a student there, vice president of College Republicans and campusreform.org correspondent as well.
I think on my campus, what we've seen is that the problem is that liberal bias extends both from the university administrators and the professors and the students. And it's a multifaceted problem that we're seeing on our campuses, because not only do professors often use their platforms as teachers to profess their own views instead of teaching students how to think about issues. They're instead teaching students what to think.
Harvard's such a great education. Congratulations on getting accepted there. But we reported this week the fraternities and sororities, they are single-gendered now. They have to be single-gendered. Betsy DeVos, there were protests when she went to speak because she represents President Trump. Placemats, you said, when people went home for Thanksgiving to talk about how to discuss liberal views with your family?
Yeah, I think that's just another example of the prevalent liberal bias on Harvard's campus. And the placemats are just one incredible example of how that happens. My freshman year, right before I headed home for the holidays, my dining hall became inundated with placemats telling students how to talk to their backward families at home about modern issues. This is just another example of how the university is putting their views into students' minds. This was the Office for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion that put out these placemats, and I don't think they were being inclusive at all of other students' viewpoints.
All right, show of hands. Can this be fixed? Raise your hands if you think it can be. Okay, we're going to have you back toward the end of the show, or later I think in the last hour, and we're going to talk to you about how to fix the problem, okay? Thanks for being with us, y'all.
When you think of college campuses nowadays, these might be some of the images that come to mind. A constant talk of protests, snowflakes, and safe spaces. So how do we go forward? We're back with our education panel to discuss. All right, Emily, let's start with you. You are a student. You're at Harvard. What's your main concern as you look toward the future? Because we see all these images of crazy stuff going on campus. As a conservative, do you feel threatened in any way there?
I think that is my biggest concern, is that conservative students on campus feel threatened both physically and in their academics.
Right.
And we've seen students all across the country. CampusReform.org has reported on them at various colleges, from Berkeley to Harvard, where I am,
right,
to various schools, that students are being threatened with violence, and that students are being threatened by their professors with poor grades and with public ridicule for voicing conservative opinions.
Okay.
Instead of colleges just teaching students what they should be thinking, I think they should be teaching students how to think critically. And I think that it's really, my biggest concern is that education has lost its main purpose, which is to lead students to think better and to engage with each other.
Paul Anthony, you're with Campus Reform. You're also a student at Manhattanville here in the New York City area. What are your concerns about the future?
My concerns are students feel as if that they don't have to carry themselves like second-class members of their campus community. This is why I'm really proud to be affiliated with Campus Reform as a correspondent, so that we could give a voice to the voiceless, so students have a platform to speak up on issues of or situations of injustice from a liberal bias. Me personally, at Manhattanville College, our campus is toxic towards conservative students. To be honest with you, when I approach my fellow members of the Latin American Student Association or students of Caribbean affiliation, they look upon me and they change their behavior.
Well, that's not right.
It isn't, but it's we got to make sure that we are able to provide a network and give a platform to students to speak up and feel as if they're not alone in their struggle, and that there are other people that could resonate with the issues on the campus.
Wendy, you're a professor at Johns Hopkins in the Baltimore, Maryland area. You have a different point of view because you are more to the political left. What do you think of the observations these two students just made?
Well, as a country, we have more that unites us than divides us. And right now, politically, we have seen that has sown division. But what I think is really important is that instead of safe spaces, college campuses should be brave spaces. We should be able to talk about politics, whether you're on the left or the right,
absolutely,
and not be ridiculed for it. And that's the issue.
But what about at these places where, let's say out on the West Coast, a conservative speaker is coming and everybody rises up? We can't let that guy talk because we don't want to hear that stuff.
Yeah, and I don't think.
So you're saying that is wrong? That reaction is wrong?
It's not that reaction is wrong. There's a difference between conservative speakers and those who are provocateurs. So when you bring somebody like Milo to your campus, you are igniting
What about Ben
flames.
Shapiro?
No, I don't think Ben Shapiro is a provocateur. I think that he should be able to speak. So
but there have been protests,
and that is a delicate dance we have to do. And that's a delicate dance.
But see, then there's suddenly a line. It's like, okay, is this person too provocative or not provocative enough?
Well, when you make statements that speak against the LGBTQ community, when you make statements that speak against people of color, then yes, that is absolutely wrong, and that cuts both ways.
Professor Borelli?
Look, the protests in and of themselves aren't bad. That's what we expect college students to do. But it's when the administration chooses to treat conservatives versus liberals, subjectively, when they're barring people like Ben Shapiro. That same school had a convicted Palestinian terrorist speak at that school. I mean, we're talking about DePaul University. That's where we see the problem. I hope these students who are very encouraging, they really stay on your administrations. You guys are paying the bills of the school. Keep calling for conservative speakers at your colleges.
Charlton, what about at Wagner College?
My main concern is that the divide is only growing more. I mean, I've been threatened, not necessarily threatened, but I've been told I deserve to be tarred and feathered. I deserve to be killed. I need to watch my back.
Who's saying this stuff?
Just my fellow students on campus.
People are saying this face to face to you.
They'll say it face to face to me. They'll tweet it at me.
Because you're conservative.
Right, and like for my support for the Trump campaign, I think what we need to do is focus on the people that are willing to talk and the people that are willing to come together. Kind of what like President Trump did yesterday, bringing the two sides together and just having a conversation.
Can I see your hands? Who thinks that we've reached a tipping point and things can get better now that we acknowledge it's so super polarized? All right, you're all positive. Wendy, I'm going to give you the final word.
Sounds good. Well, I just want us to make sure that it's not just conservatives, it's also liberals who feel this, right? Our country's polarized, but I am warmed by just the conversation we're having here today and know that we can come together as a country.
Very good. Charlton and Wendy and Joe and Paul Anthony and Emily, thank you very much. Great discussion. All right, it is